If you're interested in seeing a very simple uh, point on what meaning is or what it can be compared with, well, one can compare it with the concept of mana in a video game. In a video game, most abilities will cost a resource, typically referred to as mana. In some Asian games, it can be chi or whatever else. It's basically the energy that is needed for you to use the certain abilities. Well, meaning is basically those abilities that you cast in a game, if we are to compare them like that. When we think about meaning, no meaning can exist without energy that will support it, right? If we think of the mind is nothing else but a engine of creation, and it can only create and multiply. It can never delete. That is why the more you think of a song or any kind of thought, when you think about it, you'll see that it becomes harder and harder to pull it out of your mind, right? When you try to suppress it, well, unfortunately, most people don't realize that suppressing a thought means nothing else than thinking about it in a very powerful way. So instead of deleting it, you're only multiplying it more and more. See, this idea of multiplying that thought is the same as processes in programming. Let's take, for example, pathfinding from characters. You've probably seen that a character moves from point A to point B in a video game. In some cases, depending on how they are coded, if you put an obstacle in front of them and they're not capable of going around, you will see that the game becomes laggier and laggier. That is because the code tries to find a way around the obstacle faster and faster. Typically, a movement command would be prompted once every second, or half a second and a half, depending on how the platform functions. But for example, in RPG makers, it triggers once per second. If there is an obstacle and the target cannot reach its destination, it will try to trigger it faster than once per second. The faster, the more resources it will consume, which will result in a bottleneck, and probably the game will lag beyond playability or it may even crash. That is how the mind functions. You block a certain thought, it multiplies in such a way it will overwhelm your mind, and you will feel, that you simply can no longer take hold of it. You no longer think about it for a while, you'll see it will slowly dwindle away. When it comes to meaning, meaning is the same thing in a way as the abilities you use in a video game. Ultimately, they are nothing else but curses or buffs. Because ultimately, one has to understand you are the one who spells your own fate, while your fate is also in a way linked to your DNA, for example, your genetics, which will trigger certain repetitive events which have a lot of people believe in the idea of the law of attraction. Well, the point is, you can simply transcend this genetics. You can become aware more and more of the meaning that goes on in your mind. Because when you play video games, when you watch movies, when you listen to music, you will see that there are always trends in your mind. You will tend to like something more, you will tend to like a certain type of characters. There are all sorts of ways your unconscious mind will point you, will hint you at certain unresolved issues within you. Solving these will help you transcend, well, theoretically transcend, or let's say partly transcend your genetics, because those will impose a certain way of thinking. A certain kind of things will piss you off by default. But in time, you can become more patient or more wise. And the more patient you become, the harder you can be to control. Why do you think this whole society wants everyone to act as if they're on ADHD, as if they can't concentrate on anything? Because the more you overload your mind, the harder it is for you to concentrate, the noisier it becomes, and therefore the more painful your experience will be of life. Because there will be so much noise in your mind you can't concentrate. And when you can't concentrate, you simply lose your patience. When you lose your patience, you're easily a target for this sick society, because you're no longer gonna be willing to invest time into something or into creating powerful roots, that will pull you out of your misery. All such great actions require wisdom. They require patience because, well, they require perseverance, and perseverance requires patience. So, this whole idea of energy, well, you have energy in your day by day existence. You sleep certain number of hours and you have that energy. That energy is literally the mana that you have, right? When you cast abilities in your video game. And the meanings that you have are your spells, right? Some spells or abilities, whatever you want to call them, debuff the enemies, or they simply buff your allies or yourself. Similarly, when you talk things into existence, right? When you curse other people, well, it's not called a curse for nothing. There is a reason why people want to, the elites want everyone to learn English, because to a certain extent it is an occult language. It can do certain things, it can have you spell certain things upon you. Now, I wouldn't take it as a highly occult language because that's a whole different thing. People can't easily do occult things, but meaning is very powerful and it is a double edged sword. If you get used to making fun of yourself, pulling yourself down, well, those are like making you a stupid spellcaster, right? Because when you're casting spells that only bring doom and sadness and misfulfillment to you, you must be a silly goose of a spellcaster, right? You must be like a spider that is incapable of weaving web that simply doesn't catch it, right? A spider that easily gets caught in his own web is kind of a silly spider, wouldn't you say so? Similarly, as a spellcaster, if the only thing you can do is cast spells that bring more neglect and more misery into your own life, you must be hell of a caster, right? You must be hell of a silly caster. There are others that can cast doom and gloom upon others, and these hex people, these hex crafters, well, they will attract the worst type of karma because when you use your own energy to spell doom into other people's life, that is the worst kind of karma you can get. Don't forget, that karma will come back at you. Probably not during this life, but definitely they will pay for that as well. And you can also uplift others, right? That's why I always tell people your mother is the first witch you will ever meet. Because with only a few quotes, she can ruin your life by pulling you down if she's miserable, or she can uplift you and raise you well if she is, well, let's say, balanced with her own energies and conscious enough to live life in a more sensitive way. So, meaning is something like that. It is nothing else but either a curse or nothing else but a boon, a buff, depending on how you learn to use it. Because even if you tell yourself affirmations, in most situations your affirmations will fail because your unconscious mind will be more powerful. When you're used to saying self destructive things about yourself and claim them upon yourself, well, you can speak all the affirmations in the world, they're not going to work. That is why the flow of distraction, as I call it, or, well, the law of attraction doesn't function for most people. But those fuckers who sell you all the meditations for abundance and, to summon things in your life, they know that thing. They're only selling you those things because they know you're not gonna have the patience to keep up with that. You're never gonna summon anything in your life. You're never gonna change your life with just some mere affirmations. They know that you'll think with those affirmations you're gonna cheat your way out of your misery. That's why they're selling you those. Why do you think these fake gurus are called sellers of dreams, right? They only sell you emotions or how you think your life will be if those things will work. But master your unconscious mind and then things will start working because once you make peace with things that pull you down, affirmations will be more powerful, probably even far more powerful than you'd even imagine. So this being said, hopefully this video raised a bit of awareness. You are appreciated, take care, enjoy life, and this being said, Ferenc Board signing out.